Okay, let's run through the certificate functionality. So first of all, we've got certificate templates. I'm just going to add one of those. I'm going to call it Tuesday. I'm going to leave all the defaults as they are. So we'll talk more about them in a second. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go and generate a certificate. So I'm going to use the one I just made, which is Tuesday. Spell today. And it's going to prompt me for a sample because it is a sample certificate. So I'm going to pick my sample, the primary sample I'm interested in. That's going to be number 4. Number 4 has got three tests of the same analysis on it. So it's gone away and it's gathered some data for me. So I can see they've got some information about the certificate. I've got some more properties here, and I've got the results that is gathered at the bottom. And this information is all coming across from the default template. So by default, it's configured to get authorized things and to show everything. So I'm going to save this. Click this one to approve it. And then I can go away and see my finished certificate. So I've done that without really doing very much. I've just used default settings. It's gone away and it's made me a certificate with some approval information at the bottom. Let's just talk through how this is put together. So let me close this and let's go back and look at the template. So if I go and modify my template and pick Tuesday again, where we are, Tuesday, you can see I've got a number of different tabs on this particular property sheet. So on the first tab are the key elements. So the report template to use, and this is a report designer template. So if I just click on that, I can see it's standard stuff. It's based on there's a master, certificate master here that's used to define the header and the fonts and the look and feel, the colours, the thermo feel. And then I've got the certificate itself, and I click design here. And this is the design for my certificate. So I happen to have a certificate section, some information about the primary entity. And then at the bottom, I've got a table full of the results I've found, including any authorization information at the bottom. Now, clearly, I've got access to the object model in here. I get a hold of the certificates themselves, the certificate results. I can go and get the original results from it. I can go away and get lots of linked information and bring it and put it onto the report. But by default, I've just got a nice simple report that has some information about the primary entity as well as the results that have been gathered. So I'll come out of here. And that's the report template. So that's standard, nothing too exciting there. The next thing we've got is decide what kind of certificate we've got. So the first of all is it a sample, a job, or a lot certificate? And this determines what I'm prompted for and the scope of gathering the data. So at the moment it's a sample, and that'll be that. The next is the name expression. This is what shall I call my certificate? What's the identity of my certificate? This is automatically generated using the expression, and the expression syntax happens to be cert with the name of the table and then an incrementing number by default. You can change it whatever you like. You can press the ... button at the end to go and bring through some information from the object model and construct your syntax however you like it to be. So that's just the basic information. Now, we've also got the ability to categorize our certificates. So you can give them any old name, but you might want to restrict the choice of certificate based on a particular product, a particular grade code, a customer, or a language. So in this case, I might say it's for this product, this particular grade code, this customer, and this language. And these you could change these, and I could select the certificate based on this categorization. The style at the bottom isn't important; it just happens to be there for let's say grouping things. You might have certificate of analysis versus certificate of quality, for example, or a final certificate versus an in-process certificate. The next part here is the control. Well, actually, let's go and generate one of these first. So I'll use my template. If I go along and do certificate create, remember all we've done now is specified some categorization, the product and the grade code. Well, those two actually have an effect as well. So if I go and look at Tuesday and pick my sample number 4, my favorite sample, you can see it's brought through the product and the grade code. And it's actually colored in the ones that are off specification. So for that particular grade, the text results are off spec. It's expecting it's good. But it's not finding it's good. It's finding 2 instead, or whatever it's finding there. So if I change the grade code, it'll ask me if I want to refresh my certificate. And the same if I change my product. So the result, the limit checking is done on the fly based on what you're certifying the particular product to be, product and grade. So in this case, it changes. It's still off specification, but it happens to be off specification in a different way. The values are outside the limits, 4 to 6. So that's the first part, and that's just simple categorization and a bit of result checking, limit checking. I'm not actually making the decision here as to stop you from generating a certificate with being off specification. If you are just doing a certificate of analysis, you might just want to see everything, and no matter what state it is, whether it is on or off specification. So there's no logic in here to stop you, but you can add it via workflow, which we'll talk about later on. So let's come out here, and let's go and look at our certificate template again. So I go along, and I click Modify. I'm going to pick Tuesday again, because today is Tuesday. And I go away, and I can see I've got categorization we've talked about already. The next thing I've got is control. Now, control is defining the behavior of the screen itself, the login screen. So on the top left-hand side, you've got some information about the certificate, and that's determined by an entity template. So if I click through, you can see it's got these properties, and these are ones I happen to be showing on the certificate. And I can say whether they're read-only or mandatory. So if I don't want people to change the product and the grey code, I can just lock them out. If I want to get the product and grey code from the job or from the sample, I can bring them through by using default values and copying before and after. So again, standard functionality, it can be used to bring through and define values, as well as allowing you to lock down read-only and modification, that kind of thing. So that's for the top left. And then at the bottom of the grid, you've got the list of results. And again, that's controlled via an entity template in much the same way. You've got these reports and analysis. So just to make sure we know what we're talking about, if I go and look at my certificate again, pick my favorite template, Tuesday, and pick my favorite sample. These are the columns that are defined here. And in the previous one, these are the sections that are defined in the master template, the master entity template. So these are coming through. They're decided whether it's read-only or not based on the template itself. You can add your own, you can change the order, you do what you like. So if I come out, there's also a flag saying that in all cases, read-only is applicable. So you may want people to be able to modify the units or the results. You probably don't, but that's why it defaults to read-only. But I say you can override that if you like. We won't worry too much about the rest of this stuff for now. We'll talk about that in a little while. But the next thing we want to do is determine, so this is what our screen looks like, and this next section is where our data comes from and what it looks like itself. So there's two modes that are important here. One first is the load mode. And these are which results should I gather through inclusion. Should it be all the results I find for my sample job or lot, or should it be the ones that are only related to the product specification? Certificate of quality, I might just want to restrict it to things that are on the specification. Or I might want to say, I'm actually really going to hard code it down. I just want the ones I've specified. And we'll talk about that in a second. So we'll do product spec for now. And once it's gone away and determined which results to load, it needs to decide what happens if you find two of the same result. So for example, if I find the same analysis twice and it's got the same results on it, which one should I show? And the default behavior is that it appends all of them. So if you've got 3 test replicates, it will show you 3 test replicates. Now you could change that, and there's 2 other options. One's overwrite, which means that if it finds it, it just overwrites it. So effectively, you see the last one it finds. And then the other one is skip, where if it's there already, it just skips it. So effectively, it's the first one it finds. And so let's change it to be overwrite. So it's the last one I find for this product specification. So whenever I generate my certificate again, it's going to go away and work slightly differently because it's going to go and get slightly different data. So if I go and click my favorite sample, you'll see what it's done is only brought through 2 results. And these are the ones against the specification, and these happen to be the last ones because I had it on overwrite mode. If I had changed to insert mode, it would have been 1/1. It would be the first test it found. So that's using a product specific only. Now if I quickly look, I'll come out of here, we can do some more stuff around custom result lists. So I'm just going to modify this one. I'm going to pick my Tuesday one and go back to data. So I'm going to say, actually, I want to be really specific, and let's go and use the other one just for fun. In this case, I'm going to go to this tab and I'll specify which results I'm interested in very specifically. So when I click browse, add, it browses on the list of analyses and it'll add all the results for that analysis. And then you can just remove the ones you don't want. Consider that to be easier than adding them one by one. So in this case, I'm just going to get rid of number 3. And I'm also, to make you aware, there's 2 other columns here of note. First one is mandatory. And mandatory means that I cannot generate a certificate unless that result is specified. If the analysis, if the sample does not have a test result for this particular component, then you cannot generate a certificate. That's what the mandatory flag means. And the next one is a custom. And in this case, instead of using the values that have been defined against the data tab, I'm going to specify my own. So just to refresh on that, if I go back to data, the values coming through into the different columns are actually controlled by an expression. And you can click the ... button to go and get those expressions and change them if you like. By default, it's the name of the analysis and the number, the limits that are coming through, the name of the result, the units of the result, and the textual value of the result. And that's what's brought through. So you can override that on a per row basis if you want. So if you always want to call this one result and still get the values and the limits, whatever, you can do here. So if I save that, we can see what's happening. So let's go and generate our certificate. Going to go away and create Tuesday. I'm going to go and pick a number 4. And you can see it's brought through only the ones I've specified, so there's no 3 here. And in this case, I've changed the name of this to result, and it's brought it through very specifically. And that's sort of using specific reported results using the expressions you define against per line item. Now, one other thing in this section while we're here is you can also specify aliases. So if I go and modify my certificate template and find Tuesday, you'll see on the data tab there was a thing called alias at the bottom. Now, this is lab execution aliases. It's a mechanism for taking one value and swapping it to another, like translation. So in this case, I've got a cheesy example where if I see the word 1, I change it to 1. So if I just save this one and associate the alias, whenever I see that the word 1 in the reported values, it will change it. So if I go certificate create and pick my certificate Tuesday, you'll see what's happened for my favorite sample is that in this case 1 has been changed to 1, and that happens to any of these things. If it matches, it changes it. And the aliases are quite cool. You can use expressions and things like that, to change prefixes and postfixes, that stuff is this. So you get the idea. So now what we can also do is control which data can be included in the report. So we've got saying find me all the results for a given thing, or just get me the ones for the product, or just the ones I've specified. But you also need control over which ones are included, such as, for example, statuses and reporting flags. So there's another tab in the reporting template we can use for that. So I go to certificates, modify, and pick my favorite reporting one. It's Tuesday. You can see there's a thing called selection. And this controls the browse I have when I'm initially choosing something, as well as any subsequent filtering using a filter expression. So browse is a normal, criteria, a normal criteria. So we happen to have shipped it with these default values of only looking for authorized things. And then secondly, you can optionally, you can have either of these. You don't have to have them. If you don't specify a result filter or a sample criteria, whatever, it'll just get all of them. So secondly, we've got this idea of filter strings, and that must be true for the result to be included. So often in this case, you would use something like this, where the reporting control, so here, so this is that flag in the component editor. You say only should get me the ones that are flagged for reporting. And that will only bring those ones through. So it has to be true to get matched, and it has to pass the criteria too. But you don't have to have either of these specified. And that gives you control over which results are coming into your certificate, as well as, we've already talked about things like overwriting and skipping and getting just the specific components you've already listed. So that's that. So let's just save that. So there's some other few things we haven't quite covered yet. So we'll talk about approval. So what you can do is, if you remember rightly at the beginning, is that you could just authorize a certificate and then be able to generate it. But what we want to do is actually say, I want somebody important to go and check it for me, or a peer to check it for me. So I'm going to go away and add an inspection plan. So if I do this and go to certificate create, and pick my Tuesday and go 4, it's come and brought these through. And when I try and finalize it, it goes away and sets it to be an inspection, because it needs to be inspected by system in this particular case. And I can't generate that final report. I can still click the preview, and I can see my watermark, but there's no authorization there at the bottom. This isn't a valid certificate. It's clearly not a valid certificate, and it only will become valid when it's authorized. So if I go and find my list of certificates, and I've clearly been busy today, you'll find this one here at the bottom is ready for inspection. So I'm going to approve it because I'm that kind of guy. I can come in here again. I can preview it, and this is the certificate property sheet. I can preview my report. I can look at the properties against it, see my primary sample. I can see the inspection stuff against the template for the master template and the results that have come through. And all this kind of stuff you'd expect on a property sheet. Once I'm happy with it, I can click OK, and I can prove it. And I can say it's great, which is a common theme today. And I click approve, and it's gone to be approved at the bottom here, authorized at the bottom. And I can go away and I can click view on this, and that's going to bring up my real certificate with my approval information at the bottom, because I've gone away out of my effort to go and approve it. Now all of this is controlled via workflow. So if I go and look at my certificate template, modify that one, pick my favorite certificate template, which we all know is Tuesday. Under control, we've got the options to say what happens when with workflow. So first of all, you can define the initial status, and that can either be a draft or authorized. So you may not want an approval stage. You may just want to create them and print them, and that's why you have this option of setting the initial status. You can also change all of this stuff said before was controlled by workflow, and there is a life cycle behind it. And the default life cycle has things like when I become authorized, go away and fill in some fields and that kind of stuff. And that's a standard life cycle mechanism. But you can also go away and change that to be your own life cycle, or you can add an extended life cycle, which is the preferable way of doing it. So I've added an extended life cycle workflow here just for debugging. If you have a good look in here, against each of these, whenever it hits this status, in addition to performing a standard workflow, it will also put a message box on the screen as I'm going along. So that's quite handy for me to make sure it's all working. So you've got control over the workflow here, and that's kind of cute. So let me just come out here and do certificate create, and we should start seeing some more message boxes. And you could use the extended workflow for doing things like if the thing's off specification, stop it being approved, that kind of thing, if that's what you wanted to do. So I'm going to choose number 4, and I'm going to hit apply, and you see the message boxes coming through from the workflow, from the extended life cycle. Yeah, and it's submitted inspection. And away we go. It's gone to inspection, and we can't preview it because we've got the inspection to carry out. All right, so we've got approval there, we've got life cycles. Now, the last but not least is the idea that we might want to generate certificates using more than one sample, or more than one piece of information. For example, I may have a daily sample, and in addition to the results of a particular sample, I might want to pull through some tests from the daily sample, or the sample for the shift, or that kind of thing. And I can do that in an ad hoc manner via the template. So if I go to modify my template again, I can see here there's a bunch of flags, and they allow the end user to add stuff at runtime. So there are 4 flags here: add lot, sample, job, and test. If I tick those on, when I go away and generate my certificate create, I go away and I can see there's some additional options on the toolbar at the top. So these allow me to go away and say, actually, I want to add a test, and these have to match the criteria. I'm added none, was already on there, so the sad one it doesn't have, like number 1. And see that's brought through, and that would overwrite the results or skip the results as per the definition. Now, let's come out of here, and that's one way of doing it. Now, another way is more programmatic. So, for example, always know what the related sample is. You've got a property inside your system that defines that. So what you can also do from workflow, if I find workflow, there you are. And there's an example here. It says 2 additional nodes now. I've just created a general workflow here that's going to prompt for some things and create stuff. So there's a new node called create certificate that allows you to specify a template or an expression and say whether it's interactive or not. So, for example, you might want to create a certificate when a sample is authorized. You might not need the user to press any buttons at that point. You just want to create a certificate. And then you can do additional things. There's a thing called append test. So this is a scenario where we know what the daily test is going to be. We go and get a hold of it, and we bring it into the certificate along with the original primary sample. So in this case, I've kept it simple. I'm just going to prompt for them. So if I run this workflow, it's going to go away. It's going to prompt me based on the things I've set up in my workflow. And again, so if I go along here and I'll just pick number 1 because I've not had that before, it's going to pull that information through. It's got 5, 4 in it, and then 1 is the one it found at last. And that's doing ad hoc creation via workflow. And you can make some clever things from this. Now, let's just make sure we've not missed anything off. And if I just go and modify my certificate, you can see there we've got the categories, we've got our limit checking, we've got control over the data and the display of the data, and some of the buttons and inspections and all those good things. How data is filled up, if there's aliasing, how the data gets into the system, and then overriding results if we don't want to use the defaults. We want to specify stuff very explicitly. And then the normal additional things. If we go back to the workflow, sorry, to certificates, on certificates we've got the things like displaying them and viewing histories and that kind of thing. But I think that's really about it for now. I think there's not that much more exciting here. Thanks very much.